I don't know if that works, but yeah. All right, Becky and I wanted to talk to you today about an issue that really comes up, a heart issue again. And that is, it's kind of like a feeling of resentment that comes when we're leading people who aren't responding the way we think they should respond. But also, I think it happens with leaders who lead us that don't respond the way we think they should respond as well. So resentment can get in there like a poison in our hearts and really affect our, efficiency as a leader.
Yeah.
And really, what it really does, it destroys the unity of the team and
Yes.
of the body. So we wanted to kind of talk to you about that because I don't know about you, but I know that I have had to challenge, been challenged by resentment a lot of times, both from people that I lead and from people that lead me. So let's talk about that, Becky, and just see what we can come up with as to how do we get clear from that feeling of resentment that
Yeah.
it even goes to bed with you at night.
At first, you don't really notice it's a problem because it's not like offense where, you're totally like bitter about someone and you just see them and you're like trying to get away from them.
Right.
Resentment just creeps up slowly and very quietly over sometimes a long period of time. And it doesn't really manifest in specific emotions other than you just feel really tired with trying to get people to move. It's like you're giving your best, you're pouring your heart, your resources, your time, your energy, but yet you feel like you kind of dread like giving people jobs. Like you worry, like, can I actually trust them to get
Right.
this done? And when you're handing things off in the back of your head, you're beginning to stress about it. And so it kind of is like a slow, creepy, you're not angry about something specific. You're just generally a little bit frustrated and feeling like you don't really trust the people that you are entrusting jobs to. And so it's not such an obvious feeling or an obvious issue in our heart in the beginning, but if we don't deal with it, what happens is the way that we actually interact with the people that we're leading changes, and then they begin to shut down on us too. So it's something that can creep up on us. And because it can happen with people, like generally you're not like resentful of like one or two people. It tends to be like
Right.
an issue with your team. And some of that is because of our leadership styles, the way that we're leading, and because we're not addressing things. And some of it is just that people are still growing and maturing because it tends to be a general thing. We think it's not something specific with a person. It's just like a weariness I have or a tiredness I have. And so you don't actually recognize it as
Right.
something that we need to fix. A lot of times we
Yeah,
think we just need
yeah.
to like get more
And
sleep
it's
or
not,
something.
it's not something that's like unfounded. Like it
Yes.
really is built on things that
Yeah.
weren't right.
Yeah,
Like
aren't working.
something that was unjust, or responses that weren't right when you're
Yeah.
trying to mobilize people and move the ministry ahead and grow things.
Yeah.
And you've got
Yes.
people that respond in not only just in a negative way, but they do things and say things that are counterproductive.
Maybe we can just give a definition too of resentment so that it's clear what it is. And so the definition I have written down here is that resentment is a quiet anger rooted in a sense of injustice or unfairness because you feel wronged in some way by those that you're leading. And it grows from the gap between our expectations of the people we're leading, our expectations of how they're going to respond and work, and the reality of people's performance,
Right.
right? There's a huge difference there. And so a lot of times resentment becomes more obvious, or when it happens over and over, the common triggers or the common issues that crop up are, we trust people and then we feel disappointed, like you said, by either their lack of excitement or energy or even fulfilling their responsibilities. Or people who say yes to us, like, yeah, Pastor, I'll help you, but then they don't actually follow through.
Right.
They mean well, right? Or people who we give them a responsibility and they tend to drop it. So that's what resentment is. It actually becomes a underneath anger that you have towards the people that we're leading. And so there's reasons why resentment happens over and over. And we have some really practical things that we want to go through here too, because then you can actually see if maybe this is the issue that your people have, right? So one of the first reasons we have is that you have yes men instead of real leaders.
Right.
And yes men are people who they're basically excited to, yeah, I'm with the vision. Yeah, I'm with the dream or whatever, but they don't actually carry the vision and they don't carry the responsibility. And you can tell you have yes men when they're not the ones who actually are coming up with ideas or plans or their own excitement, right? They're waiting for you to say, let's do this. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. and but they don't actually contribute with their own vision. And so we don't want people around us who are just going to say yes to everything. We want people who actually want to contribute with ideas and vision and passion and those kind of things. And then another reason why resentment builds is because we don't have those direct conversations with people who drop the ball, which is a hard thing to do, right, Dad? Because it happens quite often, especially when you're training people. They think they fulfilled the responsibility, and it's actually not the way that you want it. And so what we tend to do is just pick it up ourselves and just fix it behind the scenes, or we give it to somebody else.
You know, what you're saying, Becky, is that to solve this thing of resentment, we're going to have to pull the plug and just say, hey, family talk time, right?
Yes.
Hey, do you realize what's going on? Hey, this is an issue I'm having in my heart, right? And so that we can really not only just recognize it, and we're not talking about how to live with it, guys. We're talking about how to fix it.
That's it. You got to fix it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't fix it, it's gonna bring tension in that relationship.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
One of the other reasons why resentment builds and maybe is that we assign tasks instead of vision. It was a podcast that you had done where you were in staff meeting, and one of the things that you talked about was just giving an example of how when we're trying to get people behind something that needs to be done, instead of just handing out jobs, you got to make sure that there is vision behind it. And I think a lot of times we think people already know the vision, and so we forget to communicate everything by vision. But you actually have to communicate everything by vision, because people don't want to be assigned tasks. They want to be given purpose. And when we just keep giving people jobs, especially when it's things that we're doing over and over again, like I find, when we're planning for outreaches, we just keep, okay, who's going to do this message, and who's going to come up with the drama, and we just keep handing out jobs, but we're forgetting about the vision behind it. Okay, how are we best going to communicate salvation to somebody? How are we best going to show them the love of Jesus? How can we put song and dance and music into this that's going to showcase, how beautiful Jesus is and how kind he is, or whatever it is. Like we can't forget to communicate vision, because after a while, people also resent us as leaders if all we're doing is giving them jobs. They don't want to feel like they're just given tasks to complete, We're in it because of vision. We're in it because of mission. So if we're not careful about that can build resentment both ways.
Yeah.
And another way of building resentment too is you can fall into the trap of thinking, if I just did more, maybe people will respond better.
Right.
When a lot of times it's just that we're entrusting people with responsibilities that some people are not capable of handling. And that's just the reality of it,
Yes. Yeah.
There's guys that have great heart, but they just don't have the ability or capacity.
Right. If people were robots, things would be much easier. There probably wouldn't be any resentment.
It's true. That's true. But they're also
you just recycle the robot.
Yeah, that's right.
But we're people, right?
Yeah.
And we're dealing with people, and there's something wonderful about that too. It's not that people are second rate by any means,
That's it.
because the real vision and the real purposes of God, and like Becky's saying, the kingdom purposes are going to come out of the hearts of people, not the systems and all that kind of stuff, and the understanding and the teaching. We've got to have that in place. But the whole thing is to keep our people strong and healthy, to keep our hearts strong and healthy, right? So that out of it come the issues or the fences, the limitations of our life, the ceiling of what we can do. Really comes back to this whole idea of are we resentful? Is that the relationship that we have with each other? Boy, you want to get rid of that. If there's something that there's resentfulness in our hearts towards people that we're leading, we can sort of work that out with them, but the key is to work it out in our own heart. And that's where the Bible really comes in and has a lot of encouragement, well, a lot of stories really, and a lot of times where people, great men and women of God, had to deal with people that didn't listen, right? People that didn't do what they were supposed to do, people that should have known better. And so the process that we see in the Word of God is not working it out of the people so much, but it's working it out of our own hearts so that we become strong leaders. And I think when there's a resentment-free heart in the leader, that'll pass on to the people.
That's right. Yeah. And I think King David was an awesome example of that, especially in the story of, when they all come back from fighting the Philistines, and then where they are stationed at Ziklag has been, completely rampaged and stuff. And David, instead of resenting his men who blamed him for what was happening, even though it wasn't like his issue, right? Like that's where he could really have resented his guys. Instead, he had to learn how to strengthen himself, deal with his own heart first, like you said, and then figure out how to lead with vision and direction again, right? Mobilize the guys back on the right path again and allow the tired guys to rest and the guys that weren't tired to come fight. And so as leaders, if we can deal with it in our own heart,
Right.
then we can help other people. And I think, the hope of today too is just to kind of take some time to peel back the layers. Like, is there areas where I am resenting the people that I'm leading? Because sometimes we kind of gloss it over and don't think about it, but we have to be resentment free
Right.
in order to help lead people. There's some very practical things here that we want to give to leaders to help us to deal with resentment, because if we don't deal with resentment, then we're going to be poor decision makers. We're going to make decisions based on our emotions and how we feel about people. We're going to erode trust in the relationships that we're trying to build. And we're going to increase in our stress and our burnout. So we have to deal with it, right? Like the Bible calls resentment a root of bitterness that we have to actually pull out. And it can defile many, as it says in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15. So we just want to give some really quick, helpful, productive things that you can do to deal with resentment in yourself as a leader. The first one is face reality early, right? Hoping that people are going to magically sync up with you. It's not going to happen, right? Be honest about the people in your team that are mature enough, capable enough. The people that aren't, you don't have to trust them with so much stuff, right? Figure out who you can actually rely on. The second thing is you want to be strategic with your energy. Be smart about who you invest in. You don't have to nurture and build everybody equally, right? Build where people are receiving and there's, a return on your investment. We've got to protect our time,
Yeah.
our money, and our
That's
emotional
good.
energy. The third one is stop doing their job. I know a lot of pastors that do this, right? I do this sometimes too, and I'm learning. You give somebody a job, and then in the end, when it's falling apart, you have to run in and save the day. You got to let people feel the weight of failing, of not coming through on their responsibilities so that they can, grow up a little bit. And like Dad was saying, we got to talk to people, address it, release that bitterness. And one of the last things that I want to suggest is do not covert delete people. If you're having a problem with people that you feel aren't following your lead well, don't just covert delete them. This is something that happened recently where I know of a team that was involved in something in a church and then they just stopped getting invited.
Right.
There was no communication hey, and so even though this particular team didn't know did the pastor stop inviting us because we're doing a bad job, or did he, there was just zero communication. And so a lot of times when we're trying to deal with people, we just kind of move them out of the picture. Don't do that. Okay. We got to be honest with people. If they're not working, tell them it's not working and tell them why. We want to be building trust and openness. And I think, it's like you said, Dad, earlier, the key point is the people are actually the prize. They're the thing that's valuable beyond the mission. You're not going to get it done without the people that God's put in front of you. And so we have to really learn to value people enough to step up and speak up when we need to. And deal with resentment in our heart and
Yeah.
build those relationships so that they're stronger.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, too, just to wrap this up, we have a tenet that deals with resentment, right? And that is that we
Yeah,
work
that's
together
right.
through relationship and not through control. I mean, that's one of them that's really key. And meaning that to solve the resentment are the things that we've just talked about, the points that Becky's laid out. We were talking to a ministry here last week who there was some struggles, some conflict in between what was happening and what was supposed to happen. And one of the leaders said, well, we need to put some new policies in place. And my response was, if you have to put new policies in place, it shows that there's a weakness in the culture at the heart level.
Yes.
And so if you
Yeah,
work
that's
on
it.
the heart level, keeping your heart right, keeping the hearts of your people right, then you're not going to have to do it through control, because we want to do it through relationship. Relationship has long-term benefits.
Right.
Control
Yes.
is just going to be, there's no end of the controls that you have to put on
Yeah.
people to stop them from doing the things they're not supposed to do and make them to do the things they're supposed to do. So it really comes down to a relationship of love that we have with people.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I would say, for me, if I feel like resentment coming up against, between me and someone that I'm expecting more from, that I stop and look at it and say, you know what, I really love this person. I just think, you know,
Yeah.
they're so awesome and they've got so much potential. And when you look at it from that perspective, answers come rather than more questions.
Yeah.
And so the
That's
answer
right.
is that people they're precious. They do have tremendous gifts and
Yeah.
anointings and talents, and that we can, our role actually as leaders is to work on bringing that out. I think building the people is our number one priority
Yeah.
rather than trying to make everything run smooth. You don't. There's always going
Yeah.
to be hiccups, but there's always going to be people who are willing to rise up. And I like the point that Becky said that don't look at everybody equally, right? To try and make everybody measure up. But let's invest in the people that are really responding well and look at what we can do through them, what God can do through them. So yeah, get resentment, bitterness out of your heart. You know, it's a form of
Yeah.
anger, and just get the love of Jesus in there and our relationship with people, and work together through
Yeah.
our culture that trumps our vision and certainly trumps our policies and controls.